Fascinating explanation then coming from the preliminary investigations conducted by the city of Johannesburg. Listening to that briefing is our reporter Katleho Sekhoto, who was live on the ground there and catching the latest developments. Katleho, what are we learning now as to what could have been the cause of this blast?
A very good evening, Thabo. Indeed, an extensive, comprehensive, briefing there by the city manager explaining what the work that's been done so far and the work that's coming in the next few weeks. And the city manager explaining that, for example, water has been shut off in the area and provisions are going to be made for residents who live there. And speaking about the residents, I mean, that was one of the biggest concerns, that if people are living there since the explosion underground, is it safe? And the city manager did confirm that the structural integrity of the buildings near the site is still there and that people can continue living there. And this is while technicians carry on with their work. What we know that Igoli Gas will be switching off the gas underground and those pipelines within the next 2 hours, and electricity was never restored following the load shedding that was implemented yesterday at about 8 p.m. But as you mentioned earlier on, the city manager outlining that there are 3 possible reasons or options of this gas explosion. And from a technical perspective, it's all gas related, but there are 3 options, and it's about the engineers identifying which one of these options is the likelihood of or the cause of the explosion. But I do have with me Johan Lagrange, who is a senior engineer working with the city to deal with this issue. Johan, thank you so much for your time. I mean, from a technical perspective, we heard the city manager say it's 3 options. What do we know is probably the likely one of these 3 options?
The most likely one is gas leakage, and it would be natural gas that's in the vicinity, and it can be from the consumer side, in other words, past the meter from a building, or it can be a valve from the main line that have been leaking very slowly to the level that the automatic detection system didn't pick it up. Or it can be a legal installation of LPG gas, which we haven't seen. We will still do further investigations into the buildings. But it was a gas leak. That leak into this large chamber until it reached the levels of explosiveness, and that's 5 to 15% concentration, and that caused the explosion when there was ignition source, a spark. Yeah. And it's a sad event.
So, Johan, I mean, in terms of you understand what's happening within the city underground. Is this a common occurrence elsewhere? Is this is this special in some way, and is it worrying for you as an engineer if you look at it?
I won't say it's extremely worrying. A similar event occurred in New York about 45 years ago, where also 600 meters of road was destroyed, also by LPG leakage into a sewer line at that stage. In this case, it was a service tunnel. So it is an unfamiliar thing that happened, and we will look at mitigating it by ventilating the tunnels in future, that you don't have a leak build-up of small volumes of gas, that it can end up into an explosion level. And the detection would also help if guys do early detection of gas and early leakages. Inside the buildings, we normally emanate from the older buildings with bad infrastructure or rusted pipes, are prone to leakages that can be dangerous because it will then leak to the central system.
Now, Johan, you did touch on, or the city manager did touch on, the structural integrity of the buildings around that site, saying that, look, people can live there, it is safe. And you did explain, for example, how the explosion itself didn't have a ripple effect in a horizontal way. Just to explain some of that technical, and that this is why people are safe and can still live there.
Yes, the tunnel is very much in the center of the street, so there's a lot of soil that actually dampened the blow to the sides. And the one side, the buildings are about 50 meters away, and the other side 10 meters away. So fortunately, it wasn't deep, so the power actually went vertically up, and that's where we have that fatality, as well as all those taxis and all the damage we see on the surface. But because it blew out to the top, we don't have any big forces horizontally that could damage the deep foundations of the buildings. And all those buildings are founded fairly deeply, most of them have basements, and that is what we inspected, and there is no structural damage visible at this stage.
Johan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Thank you. Thabo, you heard it there from Johan, a senior engineer roped in by the city of Joburg to assist in managing this crisis that we're seeing in the CBD, and obviously outlining some of the technicalities around it, echoing what the city manager said, structural integrity of the buildings around the site of the explosion still being maintained and that people can still live there, but obviously resources such as electricity, water and gas being shut off there, just to make sure that the site is being contained and that people living and walking around there are safe.
Katleho Sekhoto, appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming on this evening.